this is the best thing I could ever do in my life.
On today's episode, we're sitting down with Lora Poepping. Lora is president of Plum Coaching and Consulting, and she's actually a return visitor. So we're actually excited to dig a little bit deeper on Lora and the professional path that she's taken.
This is The Career Cue, the podcast focused on helping you navigate the signals in your career to keep you growing and moving forward in business and in life. Here's today's host, Stacey Harris.
So welcome to the show, Lora.
It is so exciting to be here again. Of course, my number 2 podcast of my entire career. And thank you so much for having me again.
So excited to get you back in the studio. This is awesome. Thank you so much. So let's talk about you a little bit before we get into how other folks can decide to go out on their own. But when was it that you started to think about going kind of beyond the traditional corporate path? And what did that look like?
So I'm going to back up a little bit, Stacey, and just say that I had always thought of myself as a corporate gal, a corporate person. I started my career with a firm, Touche Ross, this dates me, and then Deloitte, which is familiar to many people, and many years in those industries, and then 13 years at Microsoft. And I was, and many of your listeners will probably feel the same way, really committed to whatever organization that I was working for, and really excited about working for that organization and almost a cheerleader for it. And I never envisioned myself as doing anything beyond that, probably staying in corporate life for the rest of my career. So when I was laid off from Microsoft in 2009, it actually caused me to think a little bit more creatively about where I wanted to go with version 2 of my career. So I wish I could say that I was really intentional, but like many listeners of your podcast, there are people that lose their job for whatever reason. And in my case, it was the catalyst for finding something that really fed my soul, which turned out to be Plum.
That's fantastic. So do you feel like you had that kind of fire in your belly without knowing that that was ultimately going to be the destination? But when you look back on your career, was there something that you look back on and you realize that you kind of had it in you all along?
Yes and no. I would never call myself an entrepreneur, although I was very lucky and had a business coach who made me own that and say, yes, you are an entrepreneur. And then I like to proudly say I'm a woman entrepreneur. And so that is hopefully going to inspire some women entrepreneurs out there. I knew that all the time that I worked at corporate, even though I was all in, I always felt like I was a little bit more, I guess I would say, honest, collaborative, engaged, and creative than what a corporate lifestyle gave me. But I was willing to suppress what that felt like to be able to toe the corporate line. I mean, I know, again, a lot of your listeners out there are saying, yes, that's how I feel right now, or how I have felt. And I really felt, even when I was at Microsoft, that I know I can do more creative things than this, but I'm so siloed in what I'm allowed to do. What I love about what I do now is that I own it soup to nuts, and I know we're going to get to that, but it allows me the creativity I really knew I needed to burst out and have.
That's amazing. I love that part of anyone's story, right? That they're able to break through that shell and turn it into something, like something that they're super passionate about. Yeah, dig deeper. So let's talk about some of the research that you did, and it sounds like it would have been post-layoff. What were some of the things that you looked into, and who within your network did you turn to in order to be able to garner those next steps that you needed to take?
Well, off podcast, you and I talked about that I am embarrassingly unread in a number of subjects. My book club will say otherwise. I do love fiction. But I'm one of those people that I say I want to do something, and then I Google it, or for our Microsoft friends, I Bing it. I do this research mostly online, but I also call myself the human bumper car. I try something. If it doesn't work and I hit a wall, I sort of back up and then I bump into something again. And I read recently that one of the great thing about women entrepreneurs is that they don't have a lot of ego wrapped up in what they do. So they're willing to fail and they're willing to learn from those failures. And that was me. I wish I could say I bought some great book. I did buy some sort of laminated thing of writing a business plan 101, and I skimmed over it. I did, but I didn't write this super comprehensive business plan. Now, would I encourage people to do it my way? Absolutely not. And everyone who has an MBA is probably breathing a sigh of relief, the fact that I said that. But I would say that I am living an MBA right now. Everything I do is teaching me what to do, and everything that I do that doesn't work teaches me what I shouldn't do again.
That's awesome. The life MBA.
Right.
Yeah.
And you asked me the question, Stacey, who are the people that I've counted on? And I really have focused on finding people who have done something similar, whether it be a small business, entrepreneurial business, and finding people who have done something before so I do not reinvent the wheel. And asking those people, friends who are attorneys, friends who are HR attorneys, friends who have small businesses, other women entrepreneurs. And I don't have a group or a gaggle of these people, but I do feel very comfortable in being able to tap into their expertise and have really benefited from those connections.
That's great. So that actually leads into my next question about the value of having a mentor or mentors through that type of process. So it sounds like you're not shy and walking up and either virtually or in person walking up and saying, "Hi, my name is Lora. You might have something that I could, tap into." So it sounds like that was a very valuable process for you to be able to go through that and come out through the other side more informed.
Absolutely. Now, I'm very embarrassed to own this, especially as an HR person, but I've never really had a mentor.
Interesting.
And I know that goes against everything I should say on a podcast like this, but there have been a myriad of reasons that I really haven't. I had one very, very early in my career when I was in graduate school. For any of you listeners who might know Dr. Vic Boschini, I'm going to give a shout out to him. So he was a manager that I had when I was very new in career who gave me a lot of confidence. And I know you and I are going to do a podcast on confidence. And Vic really gave me a lot of latitude to learn on my own. And I think that confidence informed how I have been successful going forward. And I've had some dips. I want to be really clear with your listeners that I have not been, it's not all been unicorns and star babies and all of that. I have certainly hit some bumps in the road. I've been bullied. I've had some really bad managers like most of us have. If you've been in a corporate environment, you've had sexism. There's all different things that have happened. But one of the most important things that I got out of the very, very early in career mentorship I had was that you have to make your own mistakes. You can do it. And I thank Dr. Boschini for that. But that was many, many years ago.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned earlier a business coach. So it sounds like while the mentorship might have been on the light side, you actually did go out and seek a specific coach.
I absolutely did. And it was from meeting with friends and colleagues. And I'll tell you a story about my intentionality around reaching out to colleagues and friends. But in a conversation over Thai food that I had with a former colleague from Microsoft, he told me about this business coach that he had. And as I mentioned, or I may not have mentioned, I do not have an MBA. I have a master's in higher education administration. But that wasn't really the value. It wasn't a valuable degree for me in running a business. And so I was really lucky to have this Kismet event where over Thai food, this person said, if you're looking for help in running a business, this business coach, and I'd like to shout out to Lenora Edwards. She's exceptional, and she gave me really a lot of tools and tips and tricks for learning how to more effectively manage my business.
Wow. And how long did you work with Lora?
We probably worked together, I'm going to say 6 months, but I have to say she's another one of those people that I see as a tremendous resource to me as I move forward with my business. And I feel very comfortable and now feeling like she's a friend and I can ask her questions as a friend, friend to friend.
Sure. It sounds like you were open to hearing or accepting signals as it was related to what you were going through, and the fact that you were also communicating to your colleague what the challenges were that you were facing. So being very open about that. And had you not had that conversation over Thai food, it might have taken you a little bit longer to be able to connect with someone like Lora. That's great.
I think one of the best lessons that I can give your listeners about the idea of being entrepreneurial and going out on your own, whether you're a sole practitioner or you have this great idea like you see on Shark Tank and you want to expand it, is that if you take some ego out of the equation and just realize that A, the world does not know that it needs you, and you get really comfortable with that idea. And number two, understand that someone else out there has likely paved the way for you. And don't dig in your heels and say this is the only way it has to go. And I encourage people to explore going out on their own. Absolutely. But there are lots of different things you need to do and accept before you do that.
So that actually leads into my next question. I think a lot of folks might be asking themselves right now whether they have to actually quit their day job in order to be able to go out on their own. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'd hate to make a recommendation here. I just couldn't take the guilt if I suggested that someone just get up and quit. There are many factors involved. Number one, is it that your current position is just completely untenable and you feel like you're just getting more downtrodden every day and things are going so poorly every day that you're just going to come out of this just a jello mess. And if that's the case, then you're not quitting necessarily just to start something else. You're quitting for your health. But if you can do both at the same time, I will tell you it is possible, but you're going to have 2 jobs. And if you can manage 2 jobs, if you don't have young children at home, although there have been many successful entrepreneurs with young children at home, but just be realistic about the fact that you're doing 2 jobs at one time. But I want to drive home this point again, Stacy, that a friend of mine, and I'm going to give another shout out to someone I know, Glenn Fox, who is a serial entrepreneur, very good at what he does, and a very successful, very executive level recruiter. And he said something to me that he wished he had done before he went full throttle on a startup he created. He wished he had asked people if what he was creating would actually be helpful. His startup was a struggle, and he went through a lot of iterations. I took Glenn's sage advice, and I asked around, would people want job search coaching? Would people be responsive to job search coaching? And I asked people who would be unafraid to say to me, that does not sound cool. That does not sound valuable. I really took to heart what people's response was. And one of the things that I did early on is I brought together over dinner a brain trust of people. And I asked them to give me their honest opinion on what I was doing. And one of the people at that dinner party, Marta, said to me, here's what people are going to really want about their job search coaching. And she gave me some advice. And I said, no. I'm not doing that. No. And you know what, Marta? You were absolutely 100% correct. And I should have let my ego down at that point and been open to the idea that Marta was giving me this advice. But I had this mindset that I was only going to do it this one way. But what I love now, Stacy, and I really encourage all of your listeners to think about is be malleable. Be open don't be a pushover, but think through when someone says to you, you know what, Lora, you should really think about taking your coaching to the pet level and start coaching animals. Instead of putting up a barrier immediately, I just stop and I think about it. I understand the intent. People want you to be successful as a whole. And so I stop and think about it. And oftentimes the things that you think are crazy cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs end up being something pretty interesting.
I think that's such great advice. Like just being open to all possibilities, right? And then taking the time, giving it the time that it deserves to be able to really kind of consume it and chew on it and see what it could turn out to be. So let's take a quick break. But when we come back, let's talk about some of the small things that people can do today. If you're in a corporate role or, you've got that day job thing going, but you've got bigger dreams of doing something beyond. You don't necessarily have to wait until, there's the perfect time, because there's never the perfect time. So let's talk about some of the small things that people can do today to be able to get along on their journey.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out the show notes at thecareerq.com, where you can also subscribe to the podcast and sign up for our newsletter.
Welcome back. We're sitting down with Lora Poepping. Lora, we'd love to actually hear from you one or two of the actions that you took that helped in the decision-making process to go out on your own.
Well, I'd like to tell a little story, if I may.
Absolutely.
And that is, it harkens back to my comments earlier, which is I went out and spoke to people. And that is the number one piece of advice I'm going to give people is go out and talk to everyone you can. But I was doing a director of recruiting role for a startup and was having a cocktail with a girlfriend of mine, Mary Beth. And Mary Beth is a transition coach or a life coach. And Mary Beth was asking me, what do you think you want to do? And I told her that what I really enjoyed doing was sitting down with people, giving them advice and guidance on their job search. And she said, well, why don't you make that into a business? And I said, Mary Beth, that is not a business. That's a favor over a coffee. And she said, no, I want you to really think very seriously about it. So I would say that having someone who is very encouraging of your idea. We talked earlier about mentors. I would say Mary Beth was a great sounding board for me about what I thought something could be, and she encouraged me. But the number one small action that you can take is to go out and float your idea. That's the very first piece of advice, and Glenn also gave me the advice. So I know I keep reiterating that, but it is very valuable to understand whether your idea is viable in the marketplace. So that's the first thing I do. There are many, many steps after that, and we'll talk about that, I think, later on.
Okay, great. Let's actually talk about how long of that process it was for you. How long were you having those conversations? Not the length of the conversation, but was it a period of months? Was it a period of years? From the first time that you had the very first thought or conversation through to the first day that you launched your consulting firm.
So I'm going to call that cocktail to execution. Mary Beth to execution. I would say about 3 months, which I think is an abbreviated period of time. I have coffee many times now with prospective entrepreneurs, people considering going out on their own, something I do rather often, especially with women. And almost everyone asks me the question, how long does it take? And I say, this will be upsetting to some people, it really has taken me 3 years. 3 years to see significant traction. I still am not making as much money as I would make if I worked for a corporation, because by now I hopefully would have been promoted. I would have more stock under my belt. I would have benefits paid for. A lot of those things I do not have working for myself. Would I change a thing? Absolutely not. I still believe that losing those monetary benefits do not make up the incredible benefits I have had from empowering job seekers, from giving opportunity to my coaches to work in the way that they want to work, and to providing the services that we offer in the world.
That's incredible. And that's priceless, right? Like, there's a dollar.
I think my
amount.
husband, who does have an MBA, might put a price on that. But yes, ideally, it would be priceless. Yes.
Well, so that segues into the next question of, let's talk about the reality of going out on your own. Like, let's just get down to some straight talk about this, because a lot of the times what we see are the outliers, right? The uber successes, the people that are making Fortune magazine covers and Inc. magazine, and then also, the not so great, the unfortunate ones. So, what does a day look like for you?
Well, a day is that I think about Plum 24/7. And you and I were talking about that prior to the start of this podcast taping. And even when I worked in corporate America and I had significant jobs, I never thought as hard about those jobs as I think about Plum now. I think about everything. When you think about an organization working at a company, you have a help desk. You have a manager. You get paid whether you show up or not, hopefully. You get benefits. You get all these different things. And for me, Plum is completely resting on my shoulders. Marketing rests on my shoulders. Help desk. If my computer breaks down, I really have learned to be a very self-sufficient person. But what that means is you do wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you say to yourself, gosh, what other thing can I do to give my coaches more clients? What can I do to evangelize my company in a way that doesn't diminish its cachet? What can I do to show up better as a leader? I think about all these things all the time, and it's a lot of work. It is absolutely a lot of work. When you hear entrepreneurs say this is a lot of work, they ain't lying. It's a lot of work.
But the flip side of that is that the fulfillment that it is that you do have that control, right? And it's not about being in control, but that you have the key to the door of your destiny, of the effort that you put in. You'll be able to see that come back to you, and it likely will not be overnight, right? It's the 10-year overnight success. You see people and they pop up on these magazines or online, and you're like, I'd never heard of that person. They must have just woke up this morning and had a cup of coffee of rainbows or something, and then all of a sudden it all fell into place. But that's actually not the case.
It's typically not the case. And I think if you went to some people who look like they're instant successes, like when you watch TV shows like The Voice and someone shows up and they're an instant star, when you really get to their backstory, oftentimes they have been hitting the road for many, many, many years.
Yep.
And I feel that way, that I started getting traction after about year 3, where I really became the mature organization, mature but yet still growing organization. And it is a tremendous amount of commitment, but instant successes are rare.
And not necessarily, that's not where the longevity is either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you had called out, absolutely, this is the best thing I could ever do in my life. This is my calling. This is what I want to do. And as easy as it would be to say, I'm done, and I'm just going to go back to corporate and I'm going to make more money and have more something, whatever it might be, the free food, more free food. I just don't want to do anything else. I love it.
That's fantastic. So in looking back, what was your first day like versus what it is today?
So there really wasn't a first day. There were there were steps, like learning how to get a business license for the city, for the state. Then you have to take that business license and bring it to the bank and open a bank account. And then once you have a bank account, then they ask you the name of, well, even before the bank account, they say, what's the name of your business? I didn't name my business. And then I had to have a logo. And I had never had anyone design a logo before. And then I needed a logo. And then I needed a website. And I had never done anything having to do with a website ever before. I had to vet web developers. And I've had 3 different web developers in the course of my 6-year business. So it is an evolving process. But the first day, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes here, listeners, is that it was made up of months of preparation. There is so much foundation you have to put down before you actually open the business doors. And then it is an ever amount of work to keep it going. Mm-hmm. And the most difficult thing for almost everyone is articulating in a really effective, catchy way what the value proposition is to their business. And to be honest, I still stumble sometimes because we do HR consulting now, and we do job search coaching, and we do resumes, and we do LinkedIn profiles. How do I encompass all those things to really tell my story crisply? So it's one of the best pieces of advice I can give your listeners is once you've identified what it is you want, really, really practice with trusted advisors what your message is to them so you hone that message and make it more appealing to people you don't know.
So you just used a key term and I love this, is trusted advisor, right? And it doesn't have to be someone that walks around with a trusted advisor T-shirt on, right? Right. Trust me, I'm a trusted advisor.
Yes.
But someone that you feel safe with, but you also know that they are going to provide you with objective advice, right? Or recommendations, so then you can decide what's going to be best for you. But to be able to have those around you, and they don't necessarily, some of those people may not be within what you believe to be your nucleus, right? Because those people might be a little too close to you. But look to someone that you respect and that you value their opinion, and see what they can provide for you to be able to make those decisions.
And some of those trusted advisors are not my besties. They're not my best friends. They're great, thoughtful, interesting, imaginative people that are gracious enough to give me their perspective and their input. And I cannot thank the universe enough for those people. And you know who you are.
That's great. So if someone is listening to this podcast on the way to work and they're thinking
they want to turn around, leave.
Because that does happen. It just so happens that we're recording this on a Monday. Yeah. So they're not ready to quit their day job, but they do have dreams of working for themselves or tapping into their entrepreneurial spirit within the realm of even the corporate space or whichever industry that they're in. You had mentioned earlier about kind of vetting the idea. It sounds like that might be just within the safety of, a daily income. That might be an opportunity for someone to just even start having those conversations without actually stepping off the ledge completely. That's maybe something that people can go into the new year or a new season and say, I don't know when I'm going to launch this or if at all, but I'm going to see what folks are actually thinking about it.
And even prior to going out and talking to people, really sit down with yourself and mesh out an idea. Think about what it is you want to do. So, for example, if you've loved managing people and you thought, I want to help people grow and develop and I want to be a life or a career coach, and you're really trying to figure that out, sit down and write out what your vision for that is and research coaching certifications and coaching programs and talk to alumni of those coaching programs and go out and talk to coaches. And the last bit of advice I'm going to give you, and this happens to me all the time, is people will make a date to talk to me about their idea and they're potentially competitors.
Oh.
And they don't have a lot of sensitivity around the idea that they're quote unquote picking my brain, which my business coach says is the most painful thing you can say to somebody, is that when you sit down with someone, really honor what they do as well. So if you're going to talk to other coaches because you're thinking about being a coach, realize that you are their competition if you execute this business, and be sensitive to that. But at the same time, I've learned, because of my business coach, to be able to articulate to someone, I really value your need to move forward with your career and do something like this. But I also want to be really transparent that as you talk about this, I can't share proprietary information with you because that makes you a competitor, and that's sharing secrets with a competitor. And the look that they have on their face of, oh, yeah, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
I thought you were just going to do me this favor and open the kimono and give me everything. Just be sensitive to that.
Well, and that's part of the learning process for them too.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, that's great. So, Lora, any last kind of nuggets that you actually want to share with folks? We're going to actually talk to you in a future episode about confidence, more specifically in job search. But how did you stay confident throughout this whole process?
The number one reason is because I knew that what I was creating really was valuable to people. And it wasn't just about me. It was about empowering people to do something in a way they'd never done it before that would benefit them. And the best piece of advice that I can give people who are thinking about quitting their job and doing something else is, while you may be hesitant to talk about your business and toot your own horn, oftentimes what you're trying to promote actually isn't just about you. It's about providing something that people cannot get elsewhere, or providing a business or service or product that people may want that they can't find in that way anywhere else.
So not to take it too personally because you're providing that service, business, or product.
Exactly.
But no, the reality is that there is, because it is so close to your heart, but trying to compartmentalize the difference between the two.
Beautifully stated.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Lora. This has been amazing, and we're looking, of course, forward to even more conversations with you about many different subjects. So we hope to have you back really soon.
Thank you so much, Stacey.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Be sure to head on over to thecareerq.com, where you can get more information, show notes, and related articles to today's topic. Also, if you like what you're hearing, head on over to iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, and make sure you leave us a rating and a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks again.
The Career Q podcast is produced by Lens Group Media and recorded at Jack Straw Cultural Center in the lovely Seattle, Washington.